short shirts out there, that don't make no difference. You know what?
Oh, yeah, it's the same name on either side. Okay.
Oh, this invitation.
All right, 1 minute.
And I didn't know that till you got older.
All right, it is 7:10. The board met in closed sessions under exception C1, C11, C2, and C21. With that, I'd like a motion to, roll call please, call to order the September 14th, 2021 Waukegan Public School Board of Education meeting.
Mr. Riddle,
Present?
Mr. McBride,
Present.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan-Wapnia,
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo, Ms. Gonzalez,
Here.
Mr. Ewing.
Here. All right, and if we can have all in favor of resuming open session, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, we're back in open session. Mr. McIntyre, I see you in the back of the room. If you'd be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, and we're going to move through the agenda. So first up, we have our special recognition and presentations with our friends from the Waukegan Historical Society.
Okay. Thank you very much. So last fall, 2020, first of all, my name is Josh Bill. I'm a high school history teacher is my day job, but I'm also president of the Waukegan Historical Society. This is Ty Rohrer. He's with the Waukegan Park District, which oversees the Historical Society, and he's also here tonight to represent the Illinois State Historical Society. We spoke to the board last fall, and the board agreed to partner with us about a marker for Whittier Elementary School, historical marker, to landmark the status of that site as a spot of a famous integration case for the Illinois State Supreme Court. The board gave us the challenge of coming up with the wording of that marker, and we turn to our archives, but also to many members of the community to help us to do that. And I hope the board have you received a copy of our draft?
I have. I don't know if the entire board. Mr. Alajakis, if you could send that.
Okay. I have some paper copies as well if you'd like to look at it tonight. Yes?
Yeah.
Todd, you want to? So we came up with the wording, and what we are asking from you tonight as a board is permission to move forward with, first of all, offering some feedback, of course. If there's things you want to talk about wording-wise, changes, of course, we're open to that. But then our next step would be to approach the State Historical Society and move forward with the casting of the marker and hopefully a wonderful dedication. This is truly a community, story of the community coming together. The board, I just want to address one thing about the wording. The board did ask us to include the names of individuals, some of the individuals. That was a tall order. We could have used all 250 words that we had, listed many names, and not listed all of them. So we decided on the names of people listed in the legal record. in the actual lawsuit. So we hope that you find this to be satisfactory, and we're happy to answer any questions.
So, there's a couple.
Sure.
And the only thing, Ms. Hannah, for the people online, can you speak into the microphone? And then a reminder to the board, mask, please.
There was no mention of Luna Connors in the records, in the legal records.
So there was, but not in the actual lawsuit that was filed with first the county and then the Illinois State Supreme Court.
No Harvey Ricks.
He is definitely in the historic record for sure, but not named as part of the lawsuit.
Wow.
So we're happy to have a discussion about eliminating names or doing something else with the wording. We certainly can. Our concern with going beyond the legal record was that we don't want to leave anybody out who also was involved. We have other people named as I know you know
Absolutely,
as well. So
and that's why I mentioned those names, because they were very prominent in Waukegan and in the Whittier school area at that time, and it would be kind of a disservice if we have some names and not prominent individual names, because Luna Connors, just to let you know, she was the executive director for many years for the Waukegan Lake County Urban League. Very, very, very active in what was going on in the community around integration, segregation, all of those key issues that were happening at that time. Harvey Ricks, it was a lot of people, and so I don't know how you all would resolve not naming some, or naming some but not naming people, because I look at this and there's only 2 people on here that I know, and I've been here all my life, 64 years. Oh, excuse me, 65. So,
no, and I appreciate that, Ms. Hannah, and we certainly can discuss further what we should do with that, because I don't want to leave anybody out.
right.
When we spoke to you last fall, at first I was very much for naming names, and then I got to the historical record, and it's difficult.
Yes.
The hundreds would be falling short. Now, you mentioned individuals who are absolutely on the front lines, and there's more too that we could name. So we definitely need to resolve that, because I want this to be something the community is proud of.
And meaningful
as well. Yes.
to the area over in
Absolutely.
Whittier.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Charlotte, you want to go first?
The William G. Pomeroy Foundation, could you tell me how they got involved in this?
Sure, they are a partner with the State Historical Society. As one of the recent missions of the State Historical Society was to do more markers to show the diversity of the state. So that foundation joined in to actually cover half the costs involved of each marker that represents those stories.
Okay.
So as long as the school board is fine with that foundation being listed, they would be covering half of that cost.
You guys told us.
And I was, first of all, thank you, Mr. Aurora and Mr. Bill. I am really proud of the work that the Historical Society is doing. And I was one of Mr. Bill's students, so I know how important our local history is. Maybe to sort of address the issue that Ms. Hannah brought is, if there is some way, I know, you know, the Historical Society is going to be building out the museum. Maybe if some section of the museum could be dedicated to hosting more names involved with this particular project in the community, I think that would be a wonderful way to highlight it. Because I know, you know, a plaque can only hold so many words, but if the museum had a dedicated space for the rest of the people who were involved and a more elaborate part of the exhibit, I think that could be a way to compromise and share more of the names.
And we absolutely, thank you for that. And we absolutely are planning to have the Whittier story as a centerpiece of our exhibit space on Waukegan's history. I've also, I know she's not here this evening, but I've spoken with Ms. Leguizamo about, you know, we have an app and could do things with the app to also tell that story as well. So we hope to do that.
Cool.
You might, just a suggestion too, you might put a QR code on there, if that was possible, to even reference so people could, you know, on their reader get more information, which might include other names and even more history about the whole, how it accomplished, you know, great things in our city. Well, you do highlight that the success of this lawsuit paved the way for desegregation successes regionally and nationally, and I think that's really great. But if you wanted to possibly fit a QR code, you might reference other information, and that could possibly be changed and updated as information changed or we got new information.
Yeah, we are absolutely open to that.
Yeah,
Sure.
as far as concurrence, I definitely, you know, the board supports it, and so I know we'll
Yeah, with the QR
be in
code,
communication
they could
with Nick
put a
and
lot
kind of
more
get some information out. But
You know, the
thank you
plaque
guys
that
for
she said
coming back and
so
for
much.
updating us on the process, and we're glad to see it moving forward. As we know, Whittier will sits directly behind Edith Smith Middle School, and so it'll be pretty cool to unite those two sites. So thank you all so much for your presentation, for coming back out, and we will be in touch and look forward to further updates and that plaque revealing coming up sometime soon.
Yes, we hope so. And thank you, and you all know how to reach me, so you all don't hesitate to. Okay?
All right, thank you very
Yes.
much. So
Thank you
much.
for your time,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right, next up on the agenda is our approval of the minutes for August 10th, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. McBride,
Second.
second by Mr. Riddle. Any comments, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. We are now at our opportunity for public comment, so I have the public comment sheet. Just a reminder, we ask that you refrain from mentioning student and staff names in your remarks. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. There will be a clock on the screen so that you can see time. If you need translation services will be provided to you, and you'll be given 6 minutes to allow for your remarks to be translated. When I call your name, please step to the podium. First name on the list is Wygina Briscoe.
Good afternoon.
Good
I
afternoon.
am Wygina Briscoe, and I am the founder of Women Empowered to Educate the Community. We call ourselves WEC. I've been before this board many times, and I'm coming today to say thank you. Thank you to District 60. We have finally, it's been 2 years in the making, District 60 has finally agreed to the Black Parents Network. And I want to thank the superintendent. I want to thank Tasia and her leadership team. We finally, after 2 years, we've been meeting constantly. There's a lot of other issues and a lot of other things that are happening in the district for African American students, and that primarily is our focus. However, I believe that the parents are the ones that we need to drive this initiative. And I believe that once we get the parents on board, the parents can come before this, they can come before this board and come before the school to address what the needs are. We had met with the board, with Teresa and her leadership team about 2 years ago. We had a lot of issues and concerns that we had about the district. It's 2 years later. Some of them they have implemented, and some of them they have not. However, I believe after 2 years, things have changed. We have a pandemic, the gap, and I'm sure that what is happening with our African American kids, that the gap has now expanded. So I believe that we need to hear from our parents. We need to hear from them exactly what's happening with them here in our district. So what we're doing is, I have it's on social media. Hopefully you guys have seen it somewhere out here. But at the Brookside campus, the library, on Wednesday, September 29th, from 6 to 7, it's going to be a welcome and information meeting. Please come out and support. I ask all parents to come out to support this. As I mentioned, we believe that we need the African American parents out there to drive what's needed for our kids. All of this that our coalition has been doing for 2 years, it won't be worth anything if we don't have the support of the parents to come out to support what we're doing. So September 29th, Brookside campus, in the library, from 6 to 7, come. Tasia Fields is going to facilitate this meeting. I will be there. I have already met with quite a few parents who are going to come out to support this, but I wanted to bring it to the board to say, again, thank you to the district for moving forward with this. It's very much needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Briscoe. Next name on the list is Ray Vukovic.
Good evening. 3 weeks ago in this room at the last school board meeting, there were numerous parents that came, one after another, concerned about COVID and the reopening plan and what was going to happen. And while I don't have children in the school district anymore, you could sense the genuine concern that these parents had about exactly what was going to happen. And this past weekend, it was all over the Chicago media on Sunday and Monday, a group of parents asking for alternatives. Now, it's your job to make sure over the last few months, you should have a plan A, B, C, D, and E as to what could happen, what you might need to do, and be prepared for it. Now, we're trying to keep the kids safe. Everybody has to wear this. They clean the microphone. We're doing all these things to keep everybody safe. Now, on your consent agenda tonight, you have 5 items here involving sending staff members and possibly board members out of town to travel. So they're going to go out of town to places that are even more infected than we are in this area, and they're going to come back, and we've got a lot of kids in this community that aren't of age for a vaccination. So you're putting them at risk by sending staff out there and then bringing them back here. I think that all travel should be put on hold until the pandemic is better controlled. There's no reason for people to go out there. If we can teach kids with virtual learning, some of these seminars should be attended virtually as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. Next name on the list is Clyde McLemore.
Good evening, board members. I'm Clyde McLemore, Executive Director for Black Lives Matter Lake County. I am here first to invite you members to our 5th Community Awards Banquet dinner being held November the 7th, 2021. This awards banquet is where Black Lives Matter will honor members in the community who have worked towards betterment of the community against injustice. Our keynote speaker is Mr. Ricky Clark, founder and executive director to My Brother's Keeper, also author of 2 books, Kindergarten to 12th Grade, Can 13 Years a Slave, and What My Daddy Should Have Told Me. I am big on better education for our children. Our children are not receiving the education which our tax dollars are paying for. I realize safety is very important for our children, but when I hear what happened Friday, I understand during the lockdown or stay in place is for our safety of our children. But when you got 40 or more children who get locked out of the school and are left outside, we are putting them in harm's way. I'm not blaming the school, nor am I blaming the police, but some other plans need to take place. These children could have been shot during an active shooting. Perhaps the board could set up and designate spot for children to report in the event of a lockdown. I asked the board to revisit the whole incident that came up and a plan that none of our children could be put in such an unhealthy position. Black Lives Matter is asking the board to look at ways of improving education of black students in Illinois. Perhaps you can look at other states and what they're doing, which I gave y'all paperwork on some of the things that have been implemented in their programs in the school. I sit in this board meeting time after time hearing about what we need to do to get the right education for Latino children. But we tend to forget about black children, mainly black boys. The board claimed they can't find black teachers who could come in here. But maybe if we implement some of these programs, attract black students, we could get a better grades out of our children. I thank you for your time, and I'm available at any time if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. Next name on the list is Rayon Edwards.
Good evening, board members. My name is Rayon Edwards. First time coming to a board meeting, and I come here because I'm disturbed. And I think that a lot of times we miss the big old thing. I often talk about this when I go to the board meetings about why we have lack of parents here. I think one of those reasons is, y'all, part of a relationship, you have to build that. You can't build that if people don't know you. And I'm talking to the elected officials, because during an election, the people get to see you. They know your name. They have background information on you. At that time, and only that time, is the only time that I see most of you guys out engaged in the community. You have to build, not by sitting behind a desk. They didn't come for you for your vote, for the vote. You came to them. Try that now. You know, even with everything that's going on, and I promise you it works. You bring out support. I don't know if anybody noticed or is paying attention to that Washington campus, but again, we had 18 months to do whatever it is that we need to do. It's a million schools around us. We should have been looking, researching, studying what others is doing and what's working and what's not working. But in 18 months, we still have nothing set into place. And so I want to say to all of y'all, because we talk a lot about this COVID-19, well, in the African-American community or any other community, people don't like to be told what to do. When you come and knock on these doors and we talking about the vaccination, do we have options? For people that don't want to be vaccinated, do you guys have information to give them that keep them safe and healthy to mitigate the chances of them catching COVID? You know, sometimes when you go talk to these people, don't tell them what they need to do. Give them options. People don't like their options to be taken. We got to do better, y'all. We do too much fighting and not enough listening. And we're not doing a lot of working. These people need y'all, and our kids is dying out there, and I think everybody need to know this, and everybody need to hear this. It's shootings everywhere, every day. School being out is just not an option. It's just not. We need to figure out how to keep them babies inside of school and do it safely every day. Sending them home, you're taking away the social life of them. They can't communicate. Come on, y'all, we got to do better. We got to. And to the parents, if we gonna boycott y'all, we got to have a plan in place. We can't boycott and then what? It's nothing. It's nothing left. Nobody hurts but these babies. Everybody else got their education, and everybody else had their chance. Who is speaking to these babies and speaking for these babies? I thought that's what we elected this board from. I need to see better, y'all. We got to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Next name on the list is Calvin Mathis.
Good evening. My name is Calvin Mathis. I've joined with Brother Blanks here, the Black Abolition Movement for the Mind. I've been with Brother Blanks for about 5 months. Feels like 5 years, as much work as he does. And we've been really working a lot. And I really appreciate Brother Blanks and the work he does. And as I told him, just anything I can do to assist him and his organization is what I'm going to do to make the community, thank you, our organization, to help make the community a better community. And one of the things we have on the objectives that we've come up with is construction projects that we see around the city which lack diversity. And I know that everybody sees it. You can't help but not see who's missing at these construction sites. And the reason why I bring that up is because if we want to have a good community, a good school district, a good city, we're going to have to invest in the city, invest in people. And I know that these parents sometimes struggle with employment, and these jobs on these construction sites, which a lot of them are school district construction sites, pay really good wages. And those wages would make a big difference to a family, let's say in the First Ward where BAM is located at. And kids I've gotten to know since I've been going there are great kids. Great kids, they're just maybe in difficult situations. And I appreciate what we're doing at BAM and the things we have planned to do. But I want to enlist your help. And somebody in my thunder was kind of stolen when I talked to a couple of brothers coming in. I think we're working on that. I hope we are. So I had to digress with what I was going to say on the construction site. So we do have that in place. We're going to be working with the school district to try and get more blacks on these. I hate to lay that thing. I'm from the South. You probably can hear it, but we have that saying in the South: when you're white, you're all right. When you're brown, stick around. But when you're black, get back. It's a harsh saying, but it carries a amount of truth to it. And it hurts. It hurts. And we're hurt, and I'm glad to see we have a lot of African Americans here, because it seems like we're always, as much as we have given to this country, we're not getting it back. I'm not feeling the love, as we say. So that's all. Just want to introduce myself, and hopefully we'll work with this construction, and we'll have more black people on the construction sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mathis. Next name on the list is Brother Blanks.
Brother Blanks, Black Abolition Movement for the Mind. Real quick, I know that discipline has its place, but first and foremost, I know sometimes we don't want to get too far from the basics, so I would appreciate if we can get a copy of the agendas back here, because sometimes you have it up here, you can't really see that, so it would be a good idea to continue to put those back there. I was intending to mention it last time. But we know that discipline has its place in order for safety and order. I'm for that. However, I do take concern when in the first 2 weeks of this school year that allegedly 20 of our students have been sent home out of school suspension. According to Senate Bill 100, out of school suspension is an ultimate last resort. There's a thing called tier discipline. So when we have 20 of our students that's been sent home out of school, like Mr. Edwards said here, that's a no-no. Our children should not be sitting at home when we have an option to keep them in school. I understand what is going on now as it relates to COVID-19. But when our children can be in school, they should be in school, not sent home. So the problem I have with them being sent home is the fact Number one, these students were sent home with no work from their classes. Some of them suspended, some of them sent home on out-of-school suspension up to from 3 to 5 days. First offense, no school, no work from their classes for school, no restorative justice that took place, no intervention. And that's a serious issue when our kids are sent home when the district just signed a check for $1.6 million for mentoring and tutoring. So that money that the taxpayers have spent, it needs to be put to use in the best interest of keeping our students in school and not being sent home. That's a major problem when we write that kind of check. And in the first, that's a critical time. I think that time would have best been served for counseling. These kids just been home. I mean, they just left, got out of a COVID situation. That time could have been utilized for counseling and a whole lot of other things other than sending them back home to an environment that they should be in school and putting that good money that you guys wrote the check for to use, opposed to our kids being sent at home. Take that into consideration. I want to be looking more into that because there was every violation of what we know as Senate Bill 100, which says particularly black students is what the Senate Bill 100 was addressing. Like we said, you got to do better.
Thank you, Brother Blanks.
Could you please clarify?
Sure.
For those that's watching, you said BAM is your name.
Oh.
You are not associated with the...
Yes, Black Abolition Movement for the Mind, not to be confused for becoming a man. So no, we are not the one that the $1.6 million wrote out for, that was wrote out to. We are the ones that volunteer in the school for free. Thank you.
Next name on the list is Dr. Curtis Hines.
I'm Dr. Curtis Hines, retired educator, teacher, administrator, part-time college instructor. I've come here because I'm asking some questions here. What are the instructional plans for children who cannot attend school because of COVID? As I see it right now, the plans are just to get them out of the building. Don't worry about it, they're away from us, and that's all we're gonna do. Well, that's certainly not enough, particularly those students who have special needs. Now, if there's a teacher affected, a student affected, then I agree they do not belong in the building with other students. But we need to care enough to provide some instruction while those students are not in the school buildings. And at this point, there's no remote learning, and that needs to be implemented immediately. It appears that no forethought had gone into this. You know that you're going to have to send students out. Then just send them home, let them sleep until 12 o'clock. Parents don't have to get up and get them on the bus. That's supposed to be nice and good for us. Well, it's not. We think we should think more of our kids. And when we contact the school administrator, promises are made. Well, we're going to see if we can't get a teacher to work with these kids. And time goes by, and then they let the whole thing expire, and the kids' time is up. Now they're back in the building. But they've lost all that time out of the building with no learning. COVID appears it's going to be around for quite a while. It hasn't gotten any better. In fact, it's getting worse. So it is imperative that this school district stands ready to address the students, particularly those individuals with special needs. Perhaps a parent advisory group would help assist in some way, and we stand ready. There's enough parents here tonight who have expressed the same interest in this. So we're looking for the school district to move forward and accept help if needed so that our kids will benefit from our assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. So this concludes our public comment. We thank all of those who came and spoke this evening. And I do know, I don't want to steal the superintendent's thunder, but there will be a presentation related to quarantine support plan for those students who are out quarantining due to COVID. So those who came and are super interested in those topics, please stick around during, at least until superintendent's time, so that you'll receive that information. Next on the list is our consent agenda. I am going to ask that the consent agenda is done to expedite the work of the board. We do ask that these items generally be non-controversial and/or discussed previously. Item A, there was a typo, so I'm going to ask that we hold that over and vote on it separately. Are there any other items that any other board members would like to vote on separately? All right, with that, motion to approve items B through M.
Mr. Riddle, I so move that we approve items B through M.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Mr. McBride. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yeah, I got a comment, couple comments. We just heard a citizen talk about the conferences that that's being approved on the agenda this evening, and I appreciate excuse me, I appreciate him talking about this, and I am one of the attendees going on one of the conferences, and in November I'm also going to a conference. The one that is going to be in Los Angeles, that if they offer virtual, I am planning to do that virtual because of the situation. The conference that we're leaving for tomorrow is kind of too late to retract and not lose money, district money for. And so I really appreciate what Mr. Vukovic said, and I am kind of torn about the situation, and especially the ones that are happening now. Okay, we can't backtrack and get money back, but future conferences, we should rethink it. So thank you for that.
I wanted to make a comment, maybe similar but different to Ms. Hannah, and just so that the public knows how I will be voting. When we think about the situation that we're in and what we're experiencing, I want a lot of our staff to be networking and talking with other districts and leaders in other districts to see what we're coming up again, what different strategies they're implementing, not unlike what Mr. McLemore gave us. What are other states doing to address some of the issues that our students are facing? If we're here in-house talking amongst ourselves, it could be a lot of repetition, and we need to break out of that, because there's a lot going on in different places that maybe have already resolved some of the issues that we're facing. And it's about learning from one another and being effective in whatever it is that we're going to implement. but I agree, safety is everything. I'm very open. You know, as a person and as a school board member, I want everyone to be vaccinated. No ands or buts, but that's my personal opinion, and we work as a, you know, as a board to establish our messaging. But at the same time, it's like, how do we meet people in our same position, right, with our same responsibilities and functionalities as a board member, and how are they approaching their work in their communities? I feel like this is where we need to be, and obviously following all the CDC protocols and state protocols, especially as it relates to some of the cities that we're going to be visiting. You know, it's a lot of times these conferences are put out as if they're fun. I'm dreading it. The next 3 days, we're going to be in Atlanta, and I'm going to be nothing but stressed out. Because we're going to be listening to the mountain that we're, you know, trying to climb together as a nation, and bringing some of that back to Waukegan to see how it is that we can actually execute it successfully. We've done some of that. We've heard of some of the initiatives that we're already starting out, and I'm glad that, you know, it took 2 years, but it's better late than never, because we need that. You guys need that, and the students need that. So that's what I'm keeping in mind when I look at this consent agenda for tonight.
Well, I guess I might as well give my lead, since I'm part of the equation that we're speaking about right now. Maybe I ought to give my little bit of insight, and that is the fact that the conference that I'm getting ready to attend, I'm not going to attend it by myself. There's going to be other individuals throughout the United States attending this conference, and probably attending it for the same reason that I'm attending it, that she addressed so eloquently, that you can't learn if you stay in one spot. And I understand the idea we got a pandemic going on, but at the same time, I'm not going to be the only one putting myself in harm's way in terms of the children as you speak. There's going to be other adults like me there from other districts with children in their district. But I think that for me to be going, some of the issues that I heard speak about from so eloquent with some of the stakeholders that's got up to the mic, I'm going to learn about how to address some of those issues that we have in our district. And hopefully I can learn something there to bring back to Waukegan to be able to solve some of the problems that I heard over the mic that we have right here now. That's my reason for going. And I have no regret, no, not at all, because number one, like I said, I won't be there by myself. I'll be around other individuals around the United States there for the same purpose that I'm there, and that's to learn. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions related to the agenda? Item with that, we had a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan-Wapniak?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes. Items are approved. Motion carries, and I apologize. I'm trying to pull it up. I make it a habit to read off what they are. For a total of $1,754,790. Attendance at 22 AASA National Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. Attendance to the 2021 ILS Annual National Summit in Washington, D.C. J, Settlement, Agreement, and Release, Davis v. Board of Education of Waukegan, Community Unit School District 60 et al. K, approval of mechanical enhancements at multiple locations, and a statement of work. Number one, approval attend the ASA Leading for Student-Centered Equity-Focused Education, and M, approval to attend ASBO International Annual Conference. Now I'm going to go back up to item 9A. Item 9A, it appears as in the dollar amount, $53.50, but in the recommended action, it is correctly stated as $53,503. So what we are looking for is a motion to approve item A for $53,503.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Wozniak, second by Mr. Riddle. Any comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes, item approved, motion carries. We are now at purchases and contracts. Item 10A, Waukegan Public Schools Staff Kickoff Spirit Wear Order.
It is recommended that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent or her designee to pay for 1,642 custom spirit wear items for Waukegan Public School staff from Waukegan-based American Outfitters in the amount not to exceed $42,861.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Mr. McBride. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yes, I am glad to see that we are patronizing our vendors here in Waukegan, in which American Outfitters has been with us, that I know of, for the last 15 years. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. McBride.
I would just add that if anything, our children need spirit wear during these difficult times. So I'm glad to see that, we're encouraging use of this promotion.
All right, with that,
I just want to make a correction. This is for staff. Am I correct? Okay, just want to make a correction, just so we're not missing.
Okay.
all right, with that, we are gonna have a roll call vote.
Mr. Riddle?
We did it for the
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
We did
Ms.
it for
Hannah?
the students.
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes, item approved, motion carries. For item 11A with personnel, I need a motion to approve, with the exception of items XA2, resignations of certified staff.
Mr. Riddle, I so move with that exception.
A motion, so we have a motion to approve item 11A personnel for 9/24/11, holding over item A2 resignations of certified staff. Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Mr. McBride. Any comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We are now, we have a couple of administrators that we want to, I guess not welcome to the district, but celebrate their new roles.
When I call your name, please just stand where you're located due to COVID. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Amanda Nault, who previously served as the assistant principal at John R. Lewis. She will now serve as the interim co-principal at the same school, John R. Lewis, with a starting salary of $87,000. Congratulations, Mrs. Nault. At this time, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Clarence Berry, who previously served as the co-principal at John R. Lewis. He will now serve as the interim area superintendent 1 at Lincoln Center with a starting base salary of $138,000. Congratulations, Mr. Berry.
Thank you both, and congratulations on your new roles. We look forward to great things from both of you. All right, we are going to jump down to 14A, financial reports, ratification of the first processing of board bills for September 2021 and manual check request payments and First Midwest insurance payments for the period of August 18th, 2021 through September 7th, 2021.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education ratify the first processing of board bills for September 2021 and manual check request payments and First Midwest insurance payments for the period of August 18, 2021 through September 7, 2021. The accounts payable board, August 18, 2021 through September 7, 2021. Payments total $1,580,783.78. The manual check request payments for the period of August 18, 2021 through September 7, 2021, total $1,145,919.85. The First Midwest insurance payments for the period of August 18, 2021 through September 7, 2021, total $706,334.72.
Mr. Riddle, I so move that we approve the financial recommendation as read by the superintendent, 14A.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Kahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We are now at 14B. We want to open the hearing for fiscal year 2021-2022, original budget. See Ms. Polk coming to the podium. So do we have a motion to open the hearing?
So moved, Mr. Riddle.
I second.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Gonzalez. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. All right, we now have opened the hearing on fiscal year 2021-2022. Ms. Polk.
Yes, board president, board members, superintendent, community members, and colleagues. We presented the budget that is before you on 3 occasions prior to submission tonight for adoption. We met the statutory requirement of having the budget available for public inspection for 30 days. The notice was posted in the Lake County News Sun. And tonight we are holding this hearing prior to asking the board to adopt the budget as presented. The presentation that is attached on the board agenda item has some changes to the amounts, because as we always present to you, there are changes, because when we presented initially, we don't know what some of the grant awards are going to be. At that time, we don't know what the evidence-based funding is going to be. And of course, there's some changes to the expenditures, especially due to the unprecedented times that we are dealing with in terms of COVID. Would you put the presentation up, please? I'll just go over a few slides to just kind of point out significant changes that we added to the budget that we're presenting tonight. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. All of the information on these slides, it's the information that we previously presented to you. Next slide, please. I'm just giving you a moment to review this. Again, this slide, there aren't any changes on this slide. Next slide, please. Again, as always, I wanted to point out, it's always been our focus to be transparent. Equity is in the forefront of what the superintendent has asked us to do, and it's ingrained and indoctrinated in the strategic budget process. Sustainability, we want to be able to be fiscally sound, not only in the current year, but we look 2 to 3 years out. And then return on investment. We're doing progress monitoring in order to make sure that what we're proposing to you, we're doing periodic reviews to make sure that there's a return on what you're allocating us to spend, approving us to spend. The budget calendar is as presented. We changed the dates. Last time we had some notable changes that had to be made. Those changes were made in this calendar. Next slide. No changes to the general assumptions in terms of property tax. Stop me if I'm going too fast. Next slide, please. No change to this one. Next slide. We had some changes to the education fund revenue.
the primary increase was evidence-based funding. Due to evidence-based funding, we had about we went up to $150 million that we were not aware of, but we also know that about 5.8 million of that money is going to Learn Charter School. So we project that we're going to get allocated, although it's not solidified on the ISB website, about $144.8 million. So the revenue in the education fund changed primarily because of evidence-based funding. Next slide, please. As a result of the increase in evidence-based, there are some changes in the operating fund, projected fund balance. But you'll note here that it's not overly significant. Also, we had some changes in our expenditures due to knowing what the grants are going to be, and then making those shifts and adjustments based on what we know the grants are going to be, plus also some expenditures that we became aware of, and those expenditures have been presented to the board under separate cover. They were included in the budget that is being presented tonight. Next slide, please. Other funds, if you recall, in our original presentation during Budget Workshop 3, we shifted most of the costs from capital projects into the education fund, and so we made some adjustments on this slide. Those are the primary changes on this slide. Next slide, please. Again, this is a summary of the two. We always want to separate out the operating funds from the other funds because the wealth of the district is based upon the operating funds, which is the education fund, operation and maintenance, transportation fund, and working cash. Next slide, please. Total expenditures, looking at this one, we had about a $7.3 million increase in the education fund, about a $7.9 million increase in capital projects, because I want to point out that we have capital projects from ESSER 2 in here that we weren't able to complete, but they're in there, and those are HVAC. And then we also have additional projects that the $8 million that we presented to the board for ESSER 3. So we had to include that in there with the assumption that we were going to finish those projects. Also, remember, the board has a capital improvement plan that we would spend $10 million over the 3 years. This is the second year of the board's initiative. Next slide, please. This is basically presenting the same information, just in a different format. The first was by object. This one is by functionality, instruction, support services, and so forth. Same information presented in a different format. Next slide, please. This is the same information that we presented to you before, stating that we met all of the preliminary requirements in submitting the ESSER 3 application by having the return to school and the continuity plan posted before August the 1st. Therefore, we're able to capture allowable expenditures that date back to March the 13th of 2020 upon successful approval of the grant application. Next slide, please. We presented this information as well to you, the breakdown of what we submitted to the state in terms of learning loss, capital improvements, and then the state reserves for after-school learning loss and summer enrichment. Next slide, please. We also also wanted to include in the presentation this time for budget adoption, the capital improvement projects and when they're scheduled to be completed. You'll note that those that have the dollar amount in the third column from the left are those that have been board approved, and the value that is in the grant as well as the total that has been approved by the Board of Education.
This is ESSER 3 money?
Yes, ma'am.
And all of everything is eligible in terms of well, I'm trying to say, does it fit into the guidelines for ESSER 3 spending?
We're working with the state currently as we speak. Most of, if not all of these expenditures have been approved by the state thus far. Some, they have required that we provide additional information, and we're in the process of providing that information. What we've included in the grant in terms of capital improvement is related to air quality. So asbestos abatement, roofs, windows, those type things. And I would say about 95% of what we've submitted to them has a solid yes. We got the application back. We're providing additional information to them, and I am confident that the state is going to approve it. Additional questions?
Now, you know how things, as everyone is always saying, things during this time, things with COVID and anything attached to COVID is fluid and changing. You know, one day it may be this, one day it may be that. How certain are you in terms of if guidelines came out about ESSER 3 spending and some of the things you had to kind of backpedal on and not do because they became ineligible because of the fluid situation, how are we going to fund that kind of stuff?
Well, that's a good question, Ms. Hannah. It's a requirement that every 6 months we reevaluate the plan, inclusive of the spending plan. And that's what the superintendent has directed us to do. And we're going to go through the same process that we did before to solicit information, which is required, from the community as well as internal. And if there's any adjustments based on the needs of the organization, we'll make those adjustments. Mm-hmm. It's required.
And we are going to, what we have, like you say, you got a plan in terms of, or you will build a plan in terms of what funding source internally. Will it come from Fund 10? Will it come from Fund 20, 30? I'm just throwing numbers out, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Where we get that money from. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, ma'am. Once something becomes a need within the district, it is our job to make a recommendation, which is the appropriate fund source to use to fund those expenditures. If there are capital improvements, they would be in Fund 60. I think that's what you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the funding source, there's a difference between the funding source and the fund that we would capture those costs in.
Okay.
We're allowed to put capital improvement. Matter of fact, we've studied across the United States to see what other districts, those that are extremely large districts, are doing, and many of them are mirroring a lot of what we're doing. That's exactly why we made some of the recommendations to the Board of Education that we did. Because it mirrors, and also when we look at some of the frequently asked questions from the Department of Education, some of the allowable expenses are those that we've identified as well. So, and again, that information is going to be reviewed, and quite frankly, is reviewed often internally to make sure that it's in alignment with the priorities as identified by our district leadership.
Thank you, Ms. Cook.
You're welcome. Any additional questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is a budget hearing. I know it is number 3. The previous ones are uploaded to YouTube, but this is an opportunity for the public to ask a question as well. I know a typical format for a normal board meeting outside of public comment, there isn't the back and forth, but during the budget workshops and our committee meetings, this is the opportunity for you to ask any questions that you have based on the presentation that you just saw. All right.
Well, are you asking, is there questions?
I'm asking the community, right? Like the board said they don't have any more questions, so I ask the community if they have a question.
Mr. President, can I just ask one quick question?
Okay, yep, I'm gonna go Mr. Riddle and then I see you, ma'am. What's your name? What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Sabrina James. My question, are you asking to her or to anyone up here?
Well, you asked a question that's related to the budget presentation we just saw.
Okay, well, I have an opportunity to ask a question that's not related to that, but because I didn't sign in, it's my first meeting, and I have a question, but it's not related to that, so can I just ask my question?
I will, so typically, that would be a no. We have the public comment section, and with this not being a committee meeting, but if there is a question or a quick statement because you didn't understand the process that you would like to make,
Yes.
Please go ahead and do that at this time.
Okay, my question is for Ms. Teresa. We had a meeting yesterday, and you made a statement that for me to go for remote learning, that I would be taking your funding away and money out of your pocket. Can you tell me what you meant by that, please?
I didn't say.
You did say that. We have 2 people in here that was there, and Miss Julie Contreras that is not here, but she was there too. You stated that to me.
Yes. So
Yes, you did.
We did meet yesterday, and I said, there's a back-to-school order by the governor.
No, we're
So,
talking
I'm
about,
gonna
sorry, but we're talking about the statement that you made to me that by me trying to get remote learning back, that I would be taking funds out of your funds away and money out of your household, out of your pocket. That's exactly what you said. And I said to you, lady, I don't care about your funding or your money. I care about kids getting COVID at school, getting sick, bringing them back home and dying. And I said I care about kids so that you don't get COVID and die as well as me because I have underlying issues. That's exactly how that went. So my question still remains, what did you mean by remote learning would be taking away your funding and money out of your household? That's what you said to me at that table yesterday. After that, I had nothing else to say to you. Those are the exact words you said to me, and you still are not answering my question of what did you mean by your funds, because I told you right then and there that our community already feel like that's all y'all want. Our kids are just, I don't care if they have COVID, you're going to stay in here because of our funds.
And I think, so we allowed the
I'm sorry.
opportunity for the
I'm
for the
sorry.
question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we allowed the statement. So I'm going to ask that you've asked the question. I'm allowed the superintendent an opportunity to respond.
Yes, sir.
I'm then going to ask for the presentation to continue, and if there are any questions related to this topic.
Miss Sabrina, I'm sorry. I would like to apologize if if you misunderstood me or I misexplained it during our discussion. What I was referring to is district funding by the state. And I please know that we worked with you. We met you at the school this morning. It is our goal to continue to partner with you so that you feel comfortable sending your children to Glenwood or any school in our district. So I want to apologize if you misunderstood or if I misrepresented in our discussion. But my point was that if we just opt to remote learning, we can lose state funding. Not my personal finances, not my household finances. None of that was on the table. We're talking about district we're talking about district finances. So I apologize if you misunderstood. Okay. So I think we have the question asked and answered. Dr. Hines, is there a question related to? And Dr. Hines, is that a direct question to the superintendent, or so what Dr. Hines is asking is with that question, and I think it's appropriate related to the context of the budget. How would a student, and I want to say specifically, you're saying one student that is on quarantine?
Quarantine or either contact or because they have COVID.
How would that impact funding?
If we were to opt, it's not about attendance. If we were to opt to say that the whole district could go to remote learning is what I was referring to in our conversation. It was not about individuals quarantine learning. We were talking about if I was to opt and say, okay, all of our students could go home, we would be in violation of the governor's order. That was, all right, but that was what we were discussing yesterday.
And so there's obviously a bunch of different opinions. So there are some parents who want, as you said, Dr. Hines, when students are out on remote learning, for them to have access to academic instruction. There are other parents who say students shouldn't have to quarantine at all, and then there are parents who are saying that we should return to remote, right? So there are different conversations, and so I completely understand what your question was. And so the superintendent said if we were to send all kids home, that could impact funding.
That would not impact funding. What I was, yeah. We're gonna present after this presentation. We will present the quarantine plan.
Brother Blanks.
No clause, thank you. As it related to the $1.6 million that I spoke of earlier, if we should find ourselves back at a 100% virtual learning. How will that be handled with the money that's been sent out already, since there was no clauses, correct me if I'm wrong, please, since there was no clause stating the stipulations if we go back to remote learning, and we won't need that full staff of people or councils from that particular entity, how would that money be, how would you address that situation in short? I mean, we're speaking of funding and budget here, so if it's relative, I'd like to hear that answer.
Yeah, right.
Superintendent or Ms. Polk?
Ms. Polk.
I would like to come back with a response to that question.
Brother Blanks will reach out to you tomorrow so that we can get you your response.
Mr. President?
Go
remember I
ahead,
had a
Mr. Riddle.
question? Yeah. Ms. Polk, I just going back to your last slide, I just had a quick question, and I just want to clarify that I noticed that on there was a replacement of $1 million for the modular at Glen Flora and also the modular at Washington Elementary. And my question is basically, would we reassess by the time before we actually replace those modulars? Was there a continuing need for those modular units? I think our population is going down a little bit. I just wondered, before we actually invested in modulars, nobody really likes those. They're just something that we have to have had over the past years. I just wanted to be assured that there'd be a reassessment, whether indeed we couldn't shuffle students around to other schools where there might be some space before we'd invest in a new modular.
Yes, we're constantly in consultation with Mr. Kruckenberg and Mr. Moulton about what priorities are for capital projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm quite sure that would be reassessed.
Right, and I just want that assurance that would happen.
Yeah,
before
we
invest in
constantly
another
are talking
modular,
about
and
that
as I
stuff.
said, nobody really likes to
Yeah.
use modulars, and they're a temporary solution to a growth in population for our students. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
If there are no other questions on the budget, I'd like a motion to close the hearing.
I motion.
Motion by Ms. Gonzalez.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wozniak. Any other comments or questions? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Hearing is now closed. So now we have item D, adoption of fiscal year 2021-2022 original budget.
So moved. Do we have to move it?
You need a motion?
So we have a motion from Ms. Wozniak, a second
Second.
from Mr. Riddle. I'll take a roll call vote on this one.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Conley Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes, item approved, motion carries. All right, we are now at our reports and presentations. So first up, we have our committee reports. Are there any? Item 15B, our student board member report.
Good evening, everyone. Today, I just wanted to talk about an email I had received, I believe, a few days after the last board meeting.
You can't hear?
Oh.
Oh, he sits behind us. We apologize. It's Mr. Husani. He's our student board member.
Maybe you should stand up.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Should I stand up? I mean,
It's up to you.
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to talk about an email I had received a couple days after the last board meeting, and this is regarding the communication for COVID cases being presented in Waukegan, specifically our schools. So the email follows as, and this was from a student. The student says, "I'm writing to you today because many of my friends and I are concerned about the COVID infections within the school district and how the board isn't releasing the information to the students, parents, and public. Many of us are honestly concerned that because the board isn't actively talking about this and showing the public this information, they are actively risking the lives of the students in their school buildings. We believe that the board was elected to serve the public and the students' best interest, but we don't see that when it comes to COVID infections. We want the board to be transparent about this and show us how many people and students are infected and what we need to do to be safe. The Delta variant is running through our country, and only 46.78% of zip code area 60085, encompassing most of Waukegan, is fully vaccinated, far from the 75% threshold of collective immunity, and that is honestly enough reason for a district to be having community talks, press conferences, student town halls, a school-wide campaign about vaccines and masks, or at the minimum, just release the numbers of how many students are infected so we know how to protect ourselves. We want transparency and honesty. We feel that a student should be voicing these concerns, which is why you received this email. As a representative to the Board of Education, we believe that you should be voicing these concerns at every chance you have when you present yourself to the board. We want you to be your voice in this matter, and for all interests and purposes, you're our only way in. I hope this email gives you the strength to voice our concerns to the board, and that you voice them as many times as you can for the duration of your time. So that was the email that was sent to me, and from my perspective, so I did see that Ms. Placencia, you did put out a statement on the WPS 60 website, and it was, I think, it was regarding the confirmed COVID cases. This is a suggestion or thought process that I had, and I do believe parents are receiving these updates via text and email, as my mom receives them, and I know friends have told me that their parents have received text or email. The only thing I would say is that some way for students to also be aware when COVID cases are brought up. And I say this because some parents may not look at their phones frequently, or maybe they don't have phones, or they don't check their emails. My suggestion is an email sent to every student. I would say 6th to 12th grade, and then maybe stick to emails, or even just hand copy to give to the pre-K to 5th graders, or not pre-K, sorry, we have pre-K as well, to 5th graders, so that teachers would hand them out. As I would say 6th graders to 12th graders, they're the ones that check their emails the most. And then I would also like to say how I see, a few weeks into the school year, how I felt, how I know students have felt, especially being back in person. I would just say that I personally am more happy mentally. I am able to interact with teachers. Students have been more happy. I see people laughing, talking, interacting, and honestly excited for the school year. We're back in person. These events, pep rally is coming up for high schoolers. Being remote was very, very hurtful. Yes, it is safe, but it was, and if we do go back, which we can't right now, obviously because of the state, but it was hurtful. And I did see that the state did say that students are now allowed to take mental health days, I believe, starting from next year of January, and I know I did mention that a couple months back, and this is a state thing, so it's not a district announcement, it was a state decision. So that was just something that I did see. Also, actually, no, I think that's about it. But yeah, that's just what I have to report today. Obviously, in terms of communication and everything, obviously nothing is perfect. There will always be problems, and which is why, board members are here to listen to the community, and why I'm here to voice the students' opinions and concerns and my concerns. But that's why we're here, so we can hopefully make things better. But that's about it. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Usani. If you want to respond to that email, we will be reporting at least on the board at the board meeting, so bi-weekly, to students about where we are with the COVID cases and numbers. And just a reminder to parents and those that are watching online, if there's a positive COVID case, you should receive it via email. Starting Monday, Mr. Alajakis, parents will also, or today, starting today, in addition to that email, you're also going to get a text message. So for those that may not check their email, they're going to get a text in addition to that email. But a positive building case is different than a quarantine or a close contact. And so if your student is a close contact, they will be contacted by a contact tracer, building nurse, who will give them additional information. So just a reminder that parents, not only is it email for the building notices, not only is it now going to be a text message, it'll be reported on bi-weekly at the, not bi-weekly, but on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of each month at our board meetings. I did share with the superintendent, I don't mind sharing, or with our board member, Mr. Usani as well, is that CPS has a COVID tracker on their website. and that may be something that we also look at doing. But at least right now, the commitment is that on a second and fourth Tuesday, we will give a update on our COVID cases, and that's at schools and number of people who've tested positive. I would agree, as a person who has a son at both Edith Smith and Cook Elementary, I'm just as concerned as all the other parents are. I agree is that we need to do a better job as a community of encouraging the vaccine. San Francisco has over 90% of individuals who are vaccinated that are eligible in their schools, and as such, they have had no COVID cases. So again, that's a testament of a school district that is much larger than Waukegan Public Schools, in which the vaccine is working. And so if we want our students in school, I think that we have to stress the importance of the vaccine. So thank you for voicing those concerns. I hope that what we're doing is a start, and if we need to do more, I'm sure you will let us know, Board Member Husani. All right, next up is Delegates Report. Ms. Hannah, do you have any?
Not at this time.
Item D is the Superintendent's Report.
Yes, at this time, I'd like to call up Dr. Cesario to talk about our quarantine support plan.
Good evening, board members, board president, superintendent, members of the community. I, along with Amanda Patty, area superintendent for Area 2, will be presenting on our quarantine support plan. So the objectives of this presentation are to just give an overview of what supports will be provided to students that are in quarantine. It'll also provide highlights of resources that will be utilized to support those students, which include tutoring from our own teachers and staff members, small group tutoring provided by Varsity Tutors, one of our partners or potential partners, and an online on-demand skill supports from another potential partner, Paper. So the goals of this support model are really to provide supports to all students, general education, those diverse learner students, and English language learner students. The resources, those partners that we sought out, we wanted to make sure that they provided specific, intentional, and strategic resources to students that may speak another whose language may be something other than first language, may be something other than English, and that we also wanted to support diverse learners, and that's both due. We also wanted to make sure that our students had a familiar face and were familiar with the resources and the materials that were being used, and so that's why we wanted to really, you'll see in this presentation that we are heavily featuring our teachers. They are taking a critical role in supporting our students during quarantine. That's both before, during, and after school hours. We'll use benchmark data and other tools from the classroom, other data from the classroom, and to support our decisions in providing specific supports to these students regarding their skill development. We'll make sure that we're using small group and one-on-one, and that, again, we're going to use resources that are aligned to the core curriculum. To review the staff supports, I'm going to ask Ms. Amanda Patty to talk about those supports.
And much shorter, so give me a second. All right, good evening, Board President, members of the community, members of the board, colleagues. Thank you for your time this evening. Let me flip to my page. So my portion of the presentation really defines what will be available for a student when they are needing to quarantine for a length of time at home. We have kind of bucketed out the way that we will provide supports both during the school day and then before and after school. We also divided out the information for elementary and then middle school, high school, because the schedule and the structure of the school day are slightly different based on the number of periods and content areas that students have to be engaged in during the course of a day. And so for the elementary level, we have worked with teachers to help collaborate around this plan, as well as principals, to make sure that every student in the elementary level has access to 30 minutes of either math or literacy instruction in the morning, where they are streaming into their classrooms to hear the lesson, to hear the objectives, to go over the modeled lesson that the teacher is providing direct instruction or supports on. Receive the assignments that are going to be posted within the Google Classroom, or paper copies at home if we need to make sure those are available. And then again, have the student join in the afternoon for another portion of math or literacy, so that the student can, again, engage in the lesson instruction by the teacher, engage in conversations with the teacher through the remote streaming, and receive their classwork, as well as any clarifying questions, and receive their homework for the remainder of the day. We want to make sure that we know, we want to acknowledge the fact that because teachers will have to be simultaneously teaching both to a large group of students in front of them, as well as students who are on the screen, that takes another layer of planning. It takes a layer of preparation to make sure that they are providing resources, activities, texts, strategies that will help the students engage both on the screen and in front of them. And so to honor the additional planning that the teachers will need to do, we are compensating teachers for that additional planning time because of the additional ask that we are requiring of teachers to be able to do lessons both on screen and off screen. Yeah.
I just want to add one other really critical component to this, is making sure that the SEL aspect, the social emotional learning aspect of having the ability for teachers to see those students who are in quarantine, and vice versa, for our students who are at home to have the ability to start the day with their class, even though they can't be with their students in class. And so that was a critical part of this, is having as much access to the classroom and to what was happening during the day, even when they're at home. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
And I do apologize, but this format is not a Q&A. So if there are additional questions, I will ask if you, this is really, we got 3 presentations related to this, but if you stick around, you can ask those questions to either Ms. Patty or Dr. Cesario. Thank you.
All right, next slide, please.
I got a question.
Can they go through the presentation and then can you write it down, Ms. Hannah?
Can I write it down?
Yeah, so they can go through the presentation and then they weren't finished.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Next slide, please, Mr. White. So again, this is during the school day supports, wanting to make sure that we are defining supports for both our middle schools and our high schoolers as well. Middle schoolers have anywhere between 7 and 8 periods a day, and our high schoolers, depending on their coursework, may have 8 periods a day. And so we know that there are going to be supports needed every period for students to be able to log into the first portion of their learning, to maintain their schedule, to maintain their connection to their teachers, to maintain a flow of making sure that they are understanding the work of the day, the new lesson of the day, and receiving an opportunity to clarify any expectations related to homework or assignments. And so at the beginning of every period, the student would be logging on for the first 20 minutes to receive that direct instruction and support from their teacher, and then they would have content assignments posted in their Google Classrooms to continue their work outside of that 20-minute time period. And again, supporting teachers through additional compensation since they are planning simultaneous teaching. In addition to the work and supports that are provided during the school day, we also have identified supports for outside of the school day. We know that only logging on for a portion of lessons is not always going to be enough for some of our students, and they'll need additional supports. And so before and after school, we've identified opportunities for students to engage in tutoring from their classroom teacher for up to 3 hours per week. We've defined it as 45 minutes for math and 45 minutes for reading, but we would obviously work with the classroom teacher based on the needs of the student to know where they may have additional needs. And so this may be individually tutoring, this may be small group. And so we are wanting to make sure that in addition to the daytime opportunities in the school daytime, that students also have opportunities before or after school to engage with their teacher in one-on-ones or in small group. If for some reason the child's classroom teacher is unavailable to do before or after school tutoring, we would work within that grade level team or that course to identify an alternate teacher who may be able to fill in that time should the classroom teacher be unavailable, since this is outside of their normal work day. Next slide, please. Sorry, thank you. Go ahead, Lee, I'm sorry, thank you, Lee. Similar structure to middle school and high school, making sure that students who need access to, as I said prior, they have several courses that they are required to maintain their on-track status, and so we want to make sure that they have access to their teachers. And so up to 45 minutes twice a week per class is how we've kind of mapped that out right now. We would ask the grade level teams and the content teams to work together to develop a schedule so that the students knows when am I getting my math help, when am I getting my literacy help, when am I getting my science, my social studies, all the different courses that they have to take. And we would work with the student, the family, and the teacher team to make sure that that's available and consistent, and there's a schedule for that. And again, that could be one-on-one or in small group, depending on the number of students who may need that support. And again, if their particular classroom teacher was unavailable, we would assign it. We would ask for another teacher who teaches that same class and has the same certification, so they could continue the learning for that child. So those are a description of some of the supports put in place during the school day, and then outside of the school day, provided by our own WPS 60 staff. In addition to that, we do have partner supports that we are looking to continue our work with.
All right, thank you. So before I go on to speaking about the supports for the partners, I think it's important to emphasize that we need to have partners in this endeavor because of the great demand, and that we do have teachers that can support, but we need to supplement that. So I think that's very important to preface with that, just because it's going to it's a substantial allocation of funds, but it's in my opinion, I think it's merited, and we've kind of broken this down in a way to provide those individualized supports as well as group supports, and then and also developmentally by the grade bands.
And again, I do, so we don't have the. No, so that's not what's being, and I think if we go through the presentation, if we go through the presentation, that's not being, this hasn't been offered. This is the first time that the board or the public. It hasn't been implemented. This is the.
Can I speak to what she may be referring to?
Go for it.
So the part that we were talking about with the tutoring, that was we discussed this and vet this through the teachers union to make sure that teachers were comfortable with what we were proposing. And so that piece, yes ma'am, that piece was finalized last evening. And so this has been something that we've been working on for a while, but we're collaborating with many stakeholders in order to get this done. We would have loved to have had this first day, but it involves many steps, coordinating and collaborating with the board, and also collaborating with other stakeholders inside of the district and outside of the district.
Yeah, so, and I do apologize, but the format is not a Q&A. So go ahead, Deputy Cesario.
May I continue?
Yes, please.
Thank you. All right, so as I had mentioned before, our supports are really focused on providing individual and small group tutoring, and research has shown that individualized and small group tutoring that is provided to students multiple times per week has shown positive results in efforts to move students towards grade level proficiency and shoring up some of the learning loss that has occurred during long stretches of absences, especially during the COVID while we've had the pandemic. So our first partner that we were mentioning, next slide, Lee. Thank you. Thank you. The first partner that we're going to collaborate with to provide supports with our students is Varsity Tutors. And they, what we've discussed with Varsity Tutors is providing small group tutoring, one tutor with 5 students. This would be with grades 3 through 5. These would be live stream sessions. There would be 2 weekly sessions, 1 ELA, English Language Arts, and 1 math. These students would be given a pre-assessment to identify what skills to focus on, and also to group those students with other children that have similar skills. And then there would be a post-assessment that would be done in order to measure their progress. We also discussed having a bank of one-to-one tutoring sessions. So as we had highlighted some of the supports that the teachers would provide during the day, if we ran into a situation where we couldn't have teachers during the day to support that, Varsity Tutors could support that. We started with a bank of 500 hours that can be expanded. So again, we're just looking at ways to be proactive in terms of whether or not we have a shortage of manpower, a shortage of resources because we don't know how many students will end up being on quarantine, but we wanted to be prepared in the event that it was overtaxing. So we'd have these tutors that could support that.
Oh my God.
So the cost of this, the small group, it's $150 per session. There would be 400 groups. These would be 2,000 students, 5 per group. So $21,600 total by 54 days, and this is the amount that we have here is $3.2 million. Again, we would assess the needs of the students to make sure that if we have students that are moving in or moving out, we could really move those resources to students who are in greatest need. We want to make sure that every child, and again, that's the reason why we're using this approach where we're using our own teachers and our own staff members along with these partner agencies. We want to make sure that every student has an individualized and or small group support depending on what their needs are, and some may need both. And so those are things that we will be working through, again, utilizing the assessments provided by Varsity Tutors, also the assessments and other grade level data that's available through teachers.
So I do ask that we can have one conversation, please, so everybody gets the same information and knows what's going on. I again ask that we finish the presentation before we ask the questions.
Okay, I'm going to move on with our next potential partner. The name of the company is Paper, and they focus on one-to-one tutoring. And this, we decided to focus on 6 through 12. And the reason why we decided to focus on 6 through 12 is those students, for the most part, have the ability to interface with technology a little bit better, and there is some more independence. That doesn't mean that 6th through 12th grade students couldn't utilize some of the other supports that we have available. Everyone will be able to use the teachers, right? And then if we needed to expand Varsity Tutors, we could do that as well. But for the most part, and generally speaking, we would use Paper for 6th through 12th grade. And this is really on-demand tutoring. If a student has a particular issue or problem or has a question with a piece of homework or something that really they're trying to work through and develop, they can log in, and this is for each student in grades 6 through 12. Anytime that they want, day or night, they can post a question and they will get a response and a tutorial regarding that particular skill or question or problem. So This is $30 to $40 per student. It depends on if this is a single-year contract or a multi-year contract. So that would be a sliding scale of what the cost would be. Again, we have not signed on with either. It requires board approval, and wanted to make sure that we had gone as far as we could in the negotiations and in the discussion process so that we could come here with the most up-to-date information. This next slide is a summary chart of the supports that are available at all levels. For kinder, we had TutorMate, which was approved by the board on 7/15. First and second, we'll be primarily using the WPS 60 staff. And again, we went with using the staff here because those students, it's developmentally appropriate. We don't want those students really interfacing, spending too much time on the computer. It's more appropriate for those students to work one-on-one with their teacher or with another adult that they're familiar with. That's the rationale behind that. We try to look at this as to what would be developmentally appropriate for these different grade bands. And again, Varsity Tutors, 3rd through 5th, and then 6th through 12th would be paper. Again, all grade levels will have access to support from their classroom teachers. And this would be funded by the ESSER 3 funds. That concludes our presentation. I thank you for your patience.
Ms. Anna?
Yeah, I got some questions.
Sure.
Okay, first off, I kind of don't, I'm not understanding how we got to this whole big presentation about bringing in partners for just about $5-6 million of our ESSER funds, and all we're talking about, a quarantine plan, is for students that's being quarantined in their home for 10 days. And after 10 days, they go back to school. Now, what I really am confused about, we're in Illinois, right? Now, there was a situation in Plainfield, Illinois, that was on the TV, on the news last night, in the school district. And the school district was able to put their kids in remote learning until they get the problem fixed. And so you all are telling us that we have to, yeah, it was a boil order, and there's something going on with the water. Absolutely. So you're telling us that we're going to keep picking away at our ESSER money, our ESSER 3 money that's set aside for children. And these fly-by-night companies that are coming in, we're taking and we're going to give them the money to take and to do tutoring and everything else, and you're going to tell me, or you're telling us, that the state, yeah, I understand everything, and everybody else understands that the state of Illinois said everything got to be in person. They already said that. We already know that. However, I'm sure that we could talk with the state superintendent. They could look at numbers. Just like we didn't know everything was going to be so fluid over here and fluid over there, when they made this decision in Springfield, wherever they made the decision, that they didn't understand that the schools were going to have quarantine time. And we've been in remote learning for 18, 19 months. And you mean to tell me we have to go and develop a whole nother program. Bring in more outsourcing, giving away money that could be used for children's education. That tutoring, all of that, it's good. It's good for students, but we need to do a little bit more talking seriously to our legislators and saying, this does not, what you're talking about is not fitting in with our school district. We're not all other school districts, and all other school districts have different variables, and we have them too. We need to tailor what we need in our school district to keep our kids safe. But we don't need to keep throwing money here to this agency and this organization. Okay? We don't know who these people are. We don't know what they're going to do. We've been promised a whole lot of supports for other programs that we have been sold on that's going to help our students. And I'm still waiting for data. But this does not make sense. We've been in remote learning. You're going to tell me that we cannot take and get, if there's first graders, second graders, third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, you're going to tell me that we cannot get one teacher for each of those grade levels. And if they need to be remote learning, to do the remote learning at each grade level.
Can I interject?
You guys, you don't interject. Do not dispute what I said. Learn what I said.
Well, but
now I'm out of it.
See,
I'm done.
And that's the issue.
Yes, it is an issue.
But you're yelling
you
at
just
Miss
don't
Hannah?
know what the issues are.
Miss Hannah?
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good day.
And again, as a Board of Education, I apologize to the community. I apologize to those that are watching live. I'm not apologizing for you. I'm apologizing.
Don't apologize for me. I apologize for myself.
I'm
not doing it. Because all this foolishness
Dr.
needs
Cesar,
to
just sit down.
stop.
It's ridiculous.
Makes absolutely no sense. So again, I apologize on behalf of the Board of Education. We should be able to have a conversation and have differences of opinions. All 7 of us were elected by the citizens of Waukegan. Hey, that's fine. The voters put me here. The voters can take me out. I 100%. That's not how you communicate with subordinates. That's not how you communicate with fellow board members. It was disrespectful, and it was unbecoming of a Board of Education member. The Board of Education has listened to parents, and based on that feedback, have said we want to have a plan for the students in remote learning. The administration has come back with a plan to discuss with the Board of Education. The board can say we agree. The board can say we disagree. The board can say go back to the table. But all they're doing is presenting the best information that they can. And they worked hard to negotiate and to come up with a creative solution. And we can ask questions. We can make them do the plan better. But to belittle and to berate individuals in that manner was inappropriate, and I apologize on behalf of the Board of Education.
Thank you.
I do have some questions. Could you put up the
And I'm sorry.
dollar amount
Yeah,
one?
go ahead, and Mr. Riddle, if you can take the helm.
Can I just clarify a couple things real quick? So there's a couple things moving here. We're giving you the quarantine support plan, but we're also giving you how we're gonna close the COVID slide gap. And so you're getting two things in this presentation, so I wanna make it very clear. I also wanna make it very clear that the ESSER funds that we received and all, that money that we received and the amount of, what was it, 38 million? Give me the dollar amount right now, what was it? This money is exactly for this. It is to give one-on-one tutoring. It is to give one-on-one support. It is to give, this is exactly what that money is supposed to be earmarked for. And so this is a plan that we're giving you. This plan does not look different than any districts across the nation that are using these kind of companies. We do not have the capacity, our teachers in the workday do not have the capacity to close that COVID slide of the 15-month gap that we have not had these kids. So us going outside is not anything new. This is very customary. If you look, you could see people across the nation. So the difference with our plan is we are giving some of this pool of money to our own teachers. $3 million of this will go for our own teachers to help support our students. We know that when we try to expand summer school this year, we had a hard time just even filling those spots. We wanted more spots. We wanted more classrooms, but we did not have enough teachers to fill those classrooms. So what do? We have to have something for those kids in order to close that slide. And this is a presentation. Now the board can say, hey, we don't want this. But now we have to think about, okay, how do you do this? Because teachers may not want to work the extended day. We said, how do we close the gap? More seat time and good instruction. That's how you're gonna close it. So how do we lengthen the day? And how do we lengthen the year? And how do we get qualified staff? And we have some great teachers, but they're also burning out with this COVID slide. Just like every other staff member that's in here, working 24/7 around the clock to try to solve the problem of the pandemic. And so what we are presenting to you is not anything new that is being presented outside. And I want the board to know that. So please do your research before we just shoot something that has teeth in it and the team has worked months on, and we finally have the union saying, yes, this is something that we can agree to, because when we bring something, it has to go through negotiations. And I just want to remind the board of that stance. It's gonna come up for a vote. You're gonna have that time to vote for it. But I would ask that you please do the research behind it.
Can I also add one other thing here, is that not every teacher can participate. They may want to, but they have familial obligations and other things going on. So we can't just assume that every teacher is going to be able to partake in this. We have budgeted for every teacher to do so, but we had to look to the outside. And I just also want to say a couple other things about this. I had mentioned this early in the summer and have been negotiating with these folks since May. I don't do anything just hastily. The initial quote to have every child in the districts have one-on-one and group tutoring was over $18 million. I didn't think that was acceptable. I didn't think that was something that I could bring to the board, and looked for other options. And we worked together with the representative from Varsity Tutors to get something that I thought was reasonable and manageable. And I want to state one last piece. The ESSER funds are precisely for this. They are to support students who have succumbed to learning loss. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but again, just to reiterate the points that were brought up here, this is designed to support students. It's designed with students first. There's no other reason. If we didn't have to use vendors, we wouldn't use them. But we also have to remember, many of our teachers, many of our administrators, they have children at home too. They have other obligations. They'll do what they have to do to support our students, but they can't always do it before and after school. And we have to understand that. And so I think that's part of this is where the support comes in. Ms. Callahan-Wozniak, I know you had a question.
Okay, so the 2.8 million for the support staff, that's for all grade levels?
Yeah,
based
go
on
ahead,
every
Amanda.
teacher working that extra hour or two?
Sure, so,
Because of the remote learning?
Right, so,
And also paras, let them, just, yeah.
okay. So thank you for the question. It's not a number that's just a number out of a hat. So what, we know that some schools that are smaller in enrollment may only need a couple of tutors or a couple of teachers to be able, depending on the number of students, the number of sections. But we also know we have much larger schools who may have many more students, many more teachers to participate. So we did an average of how many tutors or teachers per school, days per week, hours per week by 24 schools, and we came up with an estimate around this number. So some schools may have a little bit less because of their staff. Some schools may need a lot more because of the number of students and teachers who will participate. So this is like an average across what we believe this will take a small school, average with the high school.
And most of the staff is on board with this?
So again, we've went with our teachers union. We've talked with principal leadership team, and we've vetted it through those channels. And teachers have some autonomy, and not full autonomy, in making sure that they provide the instruction for their students and the resources and the at-home learning opportunities. But they get to kind of pick through the day which of the 30 minutes at the elementary level, as an example, which 30 minutes is the most impactful part of my instruction for this particular morning, and which is the 30 minutes that's the most critical for my afternoon. And they'll have some opportunities to select which lessons are the most important for that learning of that day. But be consistent with the schedule so the kids know when to log on and the parents know when to help their students log on. So they will have voice and choice in how they're delivering their curriculum, in their lessons, what resources they're using, what strategies they're using. We're just really helping them pinpoint the time frame to do it so that it's consistent for students and for families.
So, okay, so I'm called on Sunday night at 9 o'clock and told my student is quarantined.
Mm-hmm.
So, didn't bring home a Chromebook, what do we do now?
Sure, so we have extra Chromebooks that we are able to, I know that the Office of Student Outreach has been wonderful in helping support getting devices to students at a moment's notice. They picked up Chromebooks today for North and got them to a medically fragile student today. And so they've been wonderful partners to make sure that kids are getting what they need, that we're bringing materials to students, dropping materials off at students' homes and things like that. So if the student isn't in the habit of bringing their device back and forth or just forgot it on Friday, we do have systems to make sure that we can get it to them as quickly as possible.
Okay, and so how do they find out what time they should log on to
Sure.
meet with their teacher?
So now that we presented this plan, we'll be asking principals to also work on this presentation with their teams and of teachers. And so then we would have grade level teams work on their scheduling and then communicate with families around this is the time of day, sending communication through Class Dojo, through Remind, through emails, all those different systems of parent communication that the teachers have access to with families to make sure, Mrs. Patty, your little guy's got to stay home tomorrow. Please make sure that he logs on at 10:30. Or 9:15. This is when his reading lesson will be for the day. So the teacher would be the primary communicator there.
And besides those 2.5 hours, there's more work for them to do
Absolutely.
beyond that that's going to
Absolutely.
keep them busy on their own?
So that they'll have full 5 hours of instructional activities and assignments provided to them for the school day to count as an attendance day. We're just saying that this identified time in the morning and in the afternoon is available for students to access supports and instruction.
And if they don't log in and they're quarantined and they don't log in, that counts as an absence, or?
Currently, the way that quarantine absences are counted is that we are providing the resources for learning at home through things that are posted within Google Classroom or learning packets materials, and that it is not counted as it's counted as a quarantine absence. It doesn't count against them in a negative way.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that having the student come into the classroom virtually in the morning, in the afternoon, or at some point in the day is also, there's also an social emotional piece to it, and that's really important. And I think that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do this. Overall, in terms of the scheduling, because I thought that was a good question, and there was another question in the audience about it, we are going to scale this up, so it's going to take time to get started with the partners. We need to get approval. With one of them, it has to still go through legal review. So some of these things are taking time. And then there was a question earlier or during public comment about having a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. We've been working on this concurrently as we work on other plans. So as we had transitioned from hybrid to summer, we were already working on these plans. But again, we can't, I wish things would work as seamlessly as just moving from one room to another, walking from one place to another. There are a lot of moving parts in order to provide the services and to recreate something that's not been in place before. This is not an excuse. I'm not using the pandemic as an excuse. It's a reality. Some of the things we're dealing with are multiple variables, and they're changing all the time. And so we're working in response to that while trying to think ahead and plan ahead. And so we do the best that we can in order to make sure that we're addressing the board, following the protocols and the processes that need to be followed, and making sure we're working within the lines of the law, so to speak.
You still have a couple more questions.
Couple more, if you want to do rapid fire.
Okay.
And then I know, and Dr. Hines did ask, and he didn't want to go to the end. He just had a quick statement that he thought would be helpful to this. But we're going to go Charlotte, Dr. Hines, and then I just had 2 questions, and then I do want to move forward. Go ahead, Ms. Wozniak.
How long before we can get Varsity Tutors and paper and this on-demand up and running? 2 months, a month?
No, Varsity Tutors, Mr. Clary is almost finished working with their attorneys. So we're able, as I said, we've been discussing this since May.
But it's 2 more weeks before we can approve it at a board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but at least we can, hopefully, in paper, he's working on that right now. But again, this is.
Maybe we'll have a special meeting.
If we need to do it, I would suggest that would be really helpful to do that so we can get them both approved. So that really it's not that hard to get both of those on, because the tech requirements we're on, I think we're syncing up nicely based on what I've already seen and heard. So it shouldn't be that long as we can get the approval.
All right, and then Dr. Hines, you had a brief statement. You said.
Yes, I was told that there would be some instructional person to deal with my granddaughter, and eventually the time ran out. She received nothing.
So I don't want to speak about your granddaughter. We can talk offline if you want. I don't want to do it in a public forum. I don't feel appropriate. Okay, so I'll speak in generalities then. How about that? Okay, so I do want to say that, again, there are some things that we need to get better at. One of them is streamlining, and I heard about what had happened, and I've been working with the Welcome Center and also with Andrina Dobbs, our nurse, so that as soon as there's a notification, we had a conversation about this today, about really streamlining this, so that as soon as we know, then IT is notified, the Welcome Center is notified, DL is notified, and our EL, our director of EL is also notified, so that we can give the proper supports. Also work through a system with the Welcome Center so that they could pull the reports daily and send those, because we can pull them by the code, I forgot what the code is. It's quarantine QX. So that we'll identify what students and what classrooms and what buildings are under quarantine, so that we can automatically provide those supports. Sure. Yes. So the Varsity Tutors, some of them are teachers, some of them are professors, some of them are college students. So they go through a rigorous screening process before they're hired, and they are specialists in the area that they would be working in.
You're saying that you started on a program. When did you start making this preparation, knowing that there would be situations like this?
I started, so moving from the remote learning plan, when we, at the onset of that, what was that, the summer of 20? We started to work on the plan for remote. Also, at the same time, started to work on the hybrid plan, right? And then also started to work on the plan for transition. If you really want to know the truth, that's how it worked. They all weren't fully baked. Needed to change certain pieces. We could. Now with hybrid, there were many things that we didn't expect that came up, and we had to make adjustments to those. All the time, we were also negotiating and bargaining, impact bargaining with the unions, primarily the teachers union in my case, and the paras union, just on items that had never been seen before. So that was very time consuming as well. I started the planning for this in the spring. I started looking at different tutoring companies, and these were the ones that I thought matched our needs best, and that's why I chose them. And I started the dialogue with Varsity Tutors first, and then paper afterwards, but I believe it was the end of April, beginning of May. Don't quote me on that, but it was before school let out, and early in the, it was in the spring, before summer. So I'm not sure what else go ahead, I'm sorry. I may have elaborated too much, I don't know.
Varsity to me is junior, seniors, and high school.
That's just their name, just like paper.
That's the name that you've attached to this.
I didn't, it's the company's name. Yeah, Varsity Tutors, and all the materials by law have to be published to the board docs, so you can see and you can look them up in their track record and everything else. But the name of the company is Varsity Tutors. The other company's name is Paper.
So you're saying that in the future here, say next week, you have a student that is in quarantine, needs to be in quarantine, will you be up and running and ready to go?
With the teacher tutoring, yeah, I had mentioned earlier, one of the questions was a timeline, and I said that we have to scale this up because we still need approval. There's two pieces really that are time consuming with work like this. One is making sure that the contract is vet through, so there's negotiating, and then making sure that the contract has been vet through the legal department. And then after that, it has to go for board approval.
One more thing. Have you contacted your retired teachers to see if they would be interested in something like this?
I contacted one. I know, and you want me to be honest, I contacted one. I know I asked Miss Amanda Patty to contact a number. If we can get retired teachers to do this, I'm happy to look at that too. Again, that's part of the reason why, as board president mentioned this, that we present on this, is to get input and to gather information and to shape things. It wasn't just me sitting in a room creating, I did put this together, but then I vetted through Amanda, and then she worked with the principal leadership team, and then we also worked with the teachers union on this to see it, right? I appreciate and you're giving a comment and some input now about bringing in retired teachers. I think it's a great idea. If you want to come out and do it, we'll look at a way, and I mean it seriously. Yeah, but I'm open to ideas. This is part of it, is that any plan that we create is not going to be perfect, and we're trying to create something that meets the greatest number of folks that are involved in this on the teacher side.
For that type of a job.
Okay, I'm just.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hines. I appreciate that. My question was around, and it's a legitimate one, and it's kind of along the lines of what Brother Blank said. I do believe in the power of virtual therapy. I think in this tool, based on age and students, that there are ways that we still can use those counselors, even if our students are in a virtual setting. But I do think he mentioned something, is if we move this route and things go the opposite direction. So let's say in October or November, the vaccine is available for our younger students, and we're not dealing with, and we ramp up and see a lot of vaccinations, which I would hope. Are we committed to a full year, right? And so that is where I would be more along the lines of how do we get something in these contracts to either say, hey, if things go this way, right, we can increase it, we can provide more, and if things go this way, we can kind of will it back in.
So I like that, and I think that's the way you have to think. I do think, though, with regards to, so this is a quarantine support plan. It's got the tutoring wrapped into it. I do think long term we're going to need the tutoring for at least 2 years, right? I did ask for a year, and I asked for a 2 year. I think we're going to need the tutoring. I think everybody can benefit from the tutoring, and even if it swings the right way, meaning that the numbers go down and we have more, no one's getting sick anymore, I still think we're going to need the tutoring. Now,
So the tutoring's not just for quarantine
No.
kids. It's for any kid that feels they need, or any child we identify as needing tutoring.
so and this is how it was formed. It started with the tutoring, and then we expanded outside of it, and looked at, so like Varsity Tutors provides the tutoring, but then it can also provide the quarantine support. Same with paper, because students are at home. If they need a question, they can do it on demand. And then with the teachers, the difference between the after school or before school tutoring that teachers would do is that they were doing it, they're streaming during the day for a student who's quarantined, right? So it's kind of combining elements, and that's really because I was working on the tutoring plan first, and then I just thought about how can we kind of utilize all these resources to support. And I thought it ended up working out pretty well. Obviously, it's not perfect, but I do think that it is maximizing resources, and it's primarily focused on using our own people.
And so I think this has been a very good discussion. I know that this was the first time that the board saw the presentation. So if we can get it uploaded to board docs, and if we can also make sure that the board gets a copy, that way people can review it. Board of Education, because we talked about it, and even Ms. Wozniak is talking about the importance of timeline, right? It is every day is important. I'm going to ask that we get all our questions. I know it's tight. We got superintendent's goals. We got, different things. But by next Tuesday, if we can get really Sunday or Monday to get our questions to Deputy Cesario, so that student achievement, if there are questions, he can come back and tighten this up so that we can continue moving with what we're comfortable moving forward with on our next Tuesday board meeting. I still
You don't want to have a special meeting on Tuesday before the...
I don't think we'll have all the questions answered, and I would rather
Not even for just a portion of it, not even just for the teachers' portion of it?
I don't think we don't need to vote on the teachers'
You don't have to
portion.
vote on that.
We don't have to vote on that?
Right now, no, we have funding for that. We would like to add, because it is substantial amount, we would like to use the ESSER 3 funds for it.
I understand that.
We can start.
It's 2.8 million, so
We're going to start.
approve that.
We are going to start with that on Monday, regardless, right? So
Okay.
that's the portion that we are starting with automatically, right? Again, I think it's up to you. I think it would be in our best interest to use those ESSER funds to do this.
Deputy Cesario, sorry, I have a request, and I would like us to say it now. Can you just create a flow chart for what it actually looks like to implement this? Like, this is when a teacher gets notified that their student has COVID, and then this is how that student will be funneled to one of these
Sure.
one of these supports. So
We can
that's
do
my
that.
ask, one. And then two, I feel like maybe not in a meeting, but we obviously in good faith and trust you guys to be discussing with the union and distributing this information. Just having confirmation that all these teachers are on board and they know, because they're gonna get a flow chart or some sort of representation of this and it's public, that they're like good to go as soon as we approve it or whatever the decision is when we come down to it.
Well, when we meet with the union, they are representatives of the teachers. So
Right.
then they take this information back.
Right. But just to say, this is what we're giving them. We gave them on this date, and then when it comes to us for next student achievement meeting, we know that information has been clearly articulated, at least from your guys' end.
We're going to work through the principals to do that.
Okay.
Okay. So the principal leadership team is going to develop that because they're the ones who are in the schools.
Okay.
And so I'm not going to personally develop that, just full disclosure.
Yeah.
Amanda's going to facilitate that work with the principals so that they can develop something that makes sense to them.
Okay.
And we'll chime in on what information flows into the school, so that then we can, initiate the process, so to speak. Yeah, and then we always share that information with the union as well. But everything that we showed today regarding the staff, and again, this includes paras that can teach, that have licensure, that want to do this. So, but yeah, we can do that.
Okay. I just really just one real quick comment. I just want to thank you and your administration for the planning that's gone into this, as you've expressed here. We heard from our community that the desire to have some instruction for our kids who are home on these unprecedented times, and we don't know what the future is going to look like. As our student board member said, there's concern and anxiety out there, and yet the students are happy. I have a grandson in school who's just tickled pink to be there. He was quarantined, and he hated it for the week that he was out. He was tested 3 times and was negative, but nevertheless, he was in close contact and he was let back in, and he was so happy to be back in school. We don't want to see our kids in remote, but this is a way to help them. He was blessed with the fact that his teacher made some contact with him even before we had these procedures in place. She was doing some contact with the student to make sure that the kids that were out of class were, and she wasn't getting compensated for it, as we know, but she was doing that extra work to keep in touch. So I just think what we're doing is so important, and I want to thank you for it, because all the schools, I've talked to other schools about what they're trying to do, and they're all trying different things. I talked to some teachers in Milwaukee who were saying that they were just Zooming in, but there was no contact with students that were in quarantine. So the teachers weren't trying to do hybrid. They just said that you can connect. Well, nobody's connecting. A lot of those kids didn't want to connect, because they couldn't really be involved. So I think this is a great option that you're really talking about, and you're looking down term, because we are going to need these tutors to bring this gap, to close the gap, and it's going to take a while. And none of us know exactly how this thing is going to go, in the next few months or in the next year. So thank you so much for what you're doing, and bring it back as the others on the board have said. This looks like a great plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just so you know, it's we still have, because we just committed to it, the COVID update and report. So I will have Mr. McBride will do the COVID report. We still need to approve the 2 new business items, and then we're going to dismiss. So go ahead, Mr. McBride.
Well, they always told me to take the cotton out of my mouth and put it in my ear. Sometimes listen. And I just been sitting and listening. And I'm a pretty good listener. I go back to when we had our meetings over at West Campus, at Brookside, when we was meeting over there. Our business person, we brought her up to the mic and we questioned you about 20 times how much money we got, and you were being beat up because the money wasn't being used towards the students. Now here we are talking about taking that money and using it for the students, and it seemed like to me nobody seemed to understand that's what we should be doing right now. And so the money that I'm hearing being spent is being used for tutoring and various other issues to help our kids be where they need to be at socially and emotionally, academically, and so on. So therefore, what I'm hearing is that the money is being used for our students to help them do better in progress. So I don't get it when our administrators go out and we do and go out and come back with a plan. We're trying to help our students move forward, and then we tend to not understand that. And I just go back to, again, the money that we received from the government. Everybody was all upset because it wasn't being used towards the students academically. Now we're doing that, and so are we going to do what we say we're going to do with the money, or are we going to just sit around and not do what we're supposed to be doing with the money? So the ideas of what I'm hearing from the administrator, they're coming back talking about tutoring, and then parents are talking about, you've heard it over and over that because of this pandemic, children are falling. Children are not getting what they need because of the fact they're not in in the classroom. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that the money that I hear that's was sent to us for lost learning is being used for lost learning. And so I don't know what else to say in reference to the idea that that's what it's being used for.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. And so we have our COVID cases, and as I mentioned during our student board member report, is that this will be something that we'll be reporting on at least second and fourth Tuesdays, as we still are in the midst of a pandemic and due to transparency. So
That's you. Careful.
Good evening, everyone. Board of Education, community members, colleagues, everybody still watching at home. So on your screen, what you'll see are our COVID building impact cases to date since the first day of school. And if you'll look there, you see we have 82 cases as of this morning. Building impact, and the building impact cases we've kind of explained in the past are the cases in which, and there's the note on there, where the individual who tested positive was in the building 1 or more days during the contagion period. So they would have been in the building during a time where they potentially were contagious, and that's kind of what triggers those COVID notifications that we send home. And so you'll see there, we broke it down, and our legal department can explain the process much better than I could, in less than 10 cases and buildings that have had 10 or more cases. And so you'll see there, many of our buildings, there's right now only a small handful who have not had a COVID case, are in the category of 10 or less, and we have one school right now in the category of more than 10. Now, many of those buildings you'll see are smaller numbers, 1, 2s, 3s, 4s, and but as you add them all up, you get to the 82 of where we're at.
and that's in context too, I always say that's 82 in a district with what?
Well, the way we calculate it is about 17,000 students and staff total, because that number of 82 both students and staff. So 17,000 over the course of about 32 days now, 33 days is where that number comes from.
And with that too, because I don't want people to think that is 82 right now. This is a year-to-date number, correct?
That is as of August 12th, from the first day of classes.
How many teachers have been, or staff have been?
I can get that to the board if you'd like.
Just no, you
half
don't
a
want to
dozen.
guess. You don't want to guess. Okay.
Maybe a little more. Earlier on, it was more heavy with staff, like the percentage of staff were heavier. Half a dozen to 9, I'd probably have to guess. But I can get the board an exact number.
And I think too, I sent it to the superintendent. There is the CPS chart, and it shows, right, and they do staff and students. So if that's something that we choose to go to, maybe that's something we want to go
Yeah,
to.
that's something we can discuss with our legal counsel to see how we can present that information on our website to ensure that we're following, maintaining privacy laws and any other laws that exist in terms of, how we list those numbers lower than 10.
So if this staff is a teacher, are we experiencing an issue because now we got to find a sub for this classroom? Or these,
I can let one of my colleagues in human resources and other departments speak to that if the board would like.
Yeah, well, I guess.
Or from academic, yeah.
Just very briefly, I don't know, Ms. Figueroa, Deputy Supervisor, whoever, just is teachers quarantining an issue?
Yeah. Are we able to find a substitute to handle the classroom when the teacher's quarantined? Okay.
As I was saying, we have an internal system already in place, and this is pre-COVID. When there is an absence and we don't find a substitute for that classroom, the procedure that the principal follow is they split the classes in 3, and they then
So now you're
send
putting
those
more
students.
in one classroom?
That has been the process. At the present time, I believe that if the principal is not getting a substitute, as teachers record their absence in the absence system, then what they probably will do is, if they have any staff, that can provide that support. They will access that staff, and sometimes some of the administrators themselves assist with substituting and supervising the classes.
Okay. I like that better than the splitting.
Well, the splitting has been the traditional format. I don't know exactly what the principals are doing to that, because that information is not being conveyed to me. We can certainly, the superintendent
I would like to know
provide a report on that.
How often we're splitting students and putting more students in a classroom.
Yes.
All right, so thank you. And we will continue to report those numbers and go through what that looks like. I'm going to skip my president's report. I'm going to go down to new business and take items A and B together if I have no objections.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wozniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Riddle. Any comments or questions on the motion? Superintendent, if you would read both.
It is also recommended that the Board of Education approve the engagement of Hodges, Louisi, Essenheimer, Raudick, and Cohn as recommended by General Counsel to defend the district in a special education due process case.
All right.
She moved it. So we moved it already and seconded it, right?
Yep, and we read both for the motion. Okay, roll call vote.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah? Ms. Callahan-Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes, items approved, motion carries for A and B. I'm gonna go to board member time. Start down this way with Ms. Wozniak.
Just want to remind everybody, homecoming starts a whole week of events with the parade on Saturday. And then on Wednesday is an all alumni event at Nightshade and Dark, starting at 6 o'clock on Wednesday night. There's also a powder puff game on Thursday. There's a football game on Friday, and then and the dance is on Saturday, I think. So it's a whole week of events, and including, I think, a rally on Wednesday night. So support the students, support your class reunion, and show up.
Awesome. Mr. McBride.
Yeah, I just want to thank, I see Dr. Hillary's in the house. I want to thank your team for actually implementing support that Mr. Cesario and Mrs. Patty spoke on in terms of making sure that the kids get what they need under these circumstances. And I know it's been a little rough because I've been watching kids not being able to catch the bus, kids just having problems in general, and parents trying to get them to school. And you guys has been on the front line trying to make sure that to fill in the gap. So I just want to thank you all for doing that. And Mr. Cesario, you was on point tonight, man. Most of the time I be watching you and I be saying, what this guy talking about? But tonight he was on point, and I appreciate everything you've done trying to do for our kids, man. Thank you.
Mr. Riddle.
I just want to thank our unsung heroes, our teachers. I think that they are doing a wonderful job in very difficult times, and I want to say a big thank you to them. I know that the kids are excited to be back, and I'm just so happy that we have so many great teachers in our district, and thank you for your efforts every day as we continue to work with our children and educate them and close the gap and just welcome them back to our facility and being back in school again. I know so many of them are so happy to be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez?
I want to sort of hearken what Mr. Riddle had said about our teachers. I think between dealing with administrative changes and between, us as a board, I feel like our teachers deal with a lot and keep our students in line as much as they can in their classrooms. So I really appreciate the people who have been here for a really long time dealing with us. And I just wanted to remind folks that due to bus shortages and schedules, communication sent out that for Cook, Glen Flora, Greenwood, Hyde Park, North, and Whittier, they now dismiss an hour earlier instead of a 2-hour early dismissal, getting out at 2:03 instead of 1:03. and that all other professional learning early release late start schedules are the same. That's it.
Yeah, and I won't be before you long, as they say at church. I just have a couple things. Is again, I know that it is a very stressful time for so many people, and I again just want to reiterate that as a board, we don't lose our cool and our composure as it relates to our interactions with each other as well as with the public. There was a situation, and there have been situations in which community members are addressing the board. I always want us to be respectful. I always want us to make sure that we're paying attention to those concerns and that we're addressing those concerns. In the same way, I would hope that the community gives the board the same courtesy and respect, because we are human beings who live in this community also. And then as far as board members to one another, I would hope that we keep the same trust and respect, is because I know for a fact that every board member who is here for the right reasons. Nobody on this board gets a paycheck. Yet some of us, most of us, give 10 to 20 hours on top of our other responsibilities in service to this community. And we do it because we care, and we have the same passion, and we want the same thing for our kids and our grandkids as you want for your kids and your grandkids. And so I would hope that in this stressful moment, as we commemorate the 20th anniversary of September 11th, we remember that we are stronger together. We have a threat. The same way we pull together in order to combat terrorism, I hope that we pull together as a community in order to address this pandemic. It is impacting us all. It is uncomfortable for us all. It is tough for us all. We're all having to make sacrifices. There are no easy answers. And I want us to just remember that we are stronger together than we are divided and fighting one another. And I also want to, in addition to our teachers, our other frontline staff, our paras, our bus drivers, our security guards, our student outreach team, our secretaries, everybody is running as fast as they can and doing all that they can. Our social workers, right? Our counselors. Again, we are stronger and better together than we are when we are apart. And with that, I would like for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. McBride, second by Ms. Wozniak. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.